We'll catch you next time. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we've got, a truly monumental stack of sources, articles, research papers, data, and we're going to try and distill it all down.
And the topic is, it's colossal, literally.
Exactly. We're talking about megafauna, their secret lives, their deaths, and their absolutely essential role on the planet.
Right. And this is so much more than just, a fun trip to look at woolly mammoths.
Right.
The loss of these enormous animals, especially during the late Ice Age, it fundamentally reshaped entire ecosystems. Globally.
We're talking about impacts that just ripple across continents, right?
Oh, absolutely. Influencing everything from, say, global climate stability all the way down to the nutrient composition of the soil in the Amazon basin. We are focusing on a very specific size-biased extinction event.
And that pattern is, unprecedented?
Completely unprecedented in the entire geological record.
Okay, let's unpack that right away, because the term megafauna, it gets thrown around a lot. We all sort of know it means big animals.
Yeah, from the Greek megas, large, and fauna for animal life. Simple enough.
But where do we actually draw the line? What is mega?
And that's the first problem, right? The definition is, it's unstable. It really varies depending on the environment, the time period, what a scientist is actually studying.
Okay, but there must be some kind of general rule of thumb.
There is. The most commonly adopted threshold you'll see in these big global studies is right around 45 kilograms.
45 kilograms, so about 99 pounds.
Yep.
I have to admit, that's smaller than I expected. That's like a teenager or a big dog. Why center the definition right there?
It's intentionally centered around the size of humans.
Yeah.
It just provides a convenient ecological marker. We're sort of the midpoint.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that 45 kilogram marker is really the absolute lowest end of a huge spectrum.
So it's a sliding scale.
A very wide one. If you look at, say, a very specific ecosystem, that lower threshold can be as little as 10 kilograms, 22 pounds, or it could go all the way up to 1,000 kilograms.
So if you're studying a remote island, the biggest animal there, maybe a 30-kilo reptile, that would count as the megafauna for that system.
Exactly. It's all about relative scale. It's context dependent.
But when we talk about the ones everyone pictures, the elephants, the giraffes, we're talking about the undisputed giants.
Precisely. The extant terrestrial megafauna. Elephants, rhinos, hippos, the bigger bovines like water buffalo. The animals that still define their habitats today.
And it's their sheer physical presence, right?
Yeah.
It's not just that they're heavy, it's the colossal impact they have just by existing.
That's the ecological hook. They aren't just living in the landscape. They are the architects of the landscape. They are engineers.
So?
Well, think about what they're doing all day. Foraging, trampling. They actively suppress the growth of woody vegetation.
So they're keeping forests from becoming too dense, turning them into savanna.
Right. And that has a critical ripple effect. You get less woody fuel built up, which means you get fewer, less intense wildfires. They also regulate the populations of smaller animals just through their presence and their movement.
Which brings us right to the central mystery here, the late Pleistocene extinction. If these giants are so important for stability, what happens when they just vanish?
It was a catastrophic shock to the system, and like we said, uniquely size-biased. Starting around 50,000 years ago, the world saw this mass extinction event.
And the statistic is just mind-boggling.
It is. Roughly 80% of all mammal species greater than 1,000 kilograms, that's 2,200 pounds, went extinct.
80%. The absolute biggest things on the planet were systematically wiped out.
While the small animals were largely untouched.
And that's what makes it so weird, so unprecedented. Previous mass extinctions, like the one that got the dinosaurs, they were widespread. They hit everything.
Exactly. The KPG event hit plants, marine life, small mammals. This was different. It was almost surgical. Laser focused on the big stuff.
So what caused it? This is the big question.
That is the half-century-long debate. It really boils down to the interplay between two massive global forces at the time, the spread of us, Homo sapiens, and really intense, rapid climate change.
It's not one or the other.
Most scientists agree it's probably both. They aren't mutually exclusive. But the community is still fiercely divided on which was more important. Was it human hunting, the overkill hypothesis, or was it the pressure from a volatile environment?
Okay, so before we dive into that controversy, Let's just nail down how scientists today talk about these animals, moving past just, how much they weigh.
Right. We have to talk about what they do. Back in 1876, Alfred Russel Wallace called them the hugest and fiercest and strangest forms.
Which is poetic, but maybe not super useful for conservation science.
Exactly. So in 2020, there was this big push, a study that looked at hundreds of papers to try and standardize the language.
And what did they come up with?
They proposed two really useful classifications, keystone megafauna and functional megafauna.
Keystone megafauna. That feels intuitive. A keystone species is one whose removal causes the whole system to collapse.
And adding mega just amplifies that. Their activity meets a disproportionate amount of needs for the rest of the ecosystem. Because they're so huge, their movements and, their digestion cycles affect vast areas.
So their loss could literally unravel an entire ecosystem.
It could. An elephant digging a water hole that saves dozens of other species in a drought. That's a keystone megafauna. Their sheer size just multiplies the consequence of everything they do.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So what's the other category? Functional megafauna.
This one is a bit more nuanced. It refers to a species that is simply the largest in its particular taxonomic group, and it has clear advantages because of that size.
And this is where that sliding scale of what mega means comes back in.
Exactly. For a mega herbivore to be functionally mega, you probably need to be around 1,000 kilograms. That's the threshold to really be safe from most predators. But for a carnivore,
it's much smaller.
Way smaller. Yeah. A terrestrial carnivore, like a leopard or a wolf, only needs to be around 13 to 16 kilograms to be considered functionally megafauna in its group.
Why such a huge difference?
Because at 16 kilograms, a predator already has a massive advantage. It can take down prey much larger than itself. It dominates smaller competitors. Its whole life strategy changes compared to, say, a small fox. Size is all relative to the job you're doing in the ecosystem.
That's a really brilliant distinction. It grounds the term in what the animal actually does.
And within that, there's a subterm, apex megafauna. And apex here doesn't just mean predator.
Right. It can apply to herbivores, too.
A fully grown rhinoceros is an apex animal. Nothing hunts it for population control. Its range is dictated by food and water, not by running away from lions. Its size liberates it.
And that liberation, that life strategy, is what defines them. It's the whole K strategy profile.
Textbook K strategists. High longevity, they live for decades. Very slow population growth, one baby at a time, long gestation periods, and as a result, very low adult mortality rates.
But that strategy, the thing that makes them so robust in a natural system.
Is there a fatal flaw when humans show up?
Because they can't reproduce fast enough to replace the ones being hunted.
Exactly. Their slow recovery rates mean that even what seems like a sustainable level of hunting can wipe them out. You can erase decades of genetic history in just a few years. That's the ghost in the room for all modern conservation.
So we understand what they are, how they function. Let's go back in time. Why did evolution even favor this supersizing in the first place?
Well, the path to being a giant is not quick or easy. There are serious constraints. One of the biggest is just the rate of size increase. You can grow fast for a little while, evolutionarily speaking, but you can't sustain that over deep time.
There's like a built-in speed limit.
There is. Studies have found the maximum rate scales with the time interval raised to the 0.25 power.
Okay, what does that actually mean in practice?
It means that if it takes you 1 million years to double your body mass, it would take you 8 million years to double it again. It gets harder and harder. Because every time you get bigger, you hit a new wall. Maybe your bones aren't strong enough. Maybe your heart can't pump blood that high. Your gut can't process enough food. To overcome each of those hurdles requires a whole new, time-consuming evolutionary innovation.
And what about getting smaller? Like insular dwarfism on islands.
That's the amazing contrast. The rate of getting smaller is over 30 times faster than the maximum rate of getting bigger. It is way, way easier for evolution to shed mass than it is to build it.
So after the dinosaurs were wiped out 66 million years ago, all these ecological niches opened up, and mammals just exploded in size.
They did. It was an almost exponential increase. We went from mammals that were just a few kilos to creatures around 750 kilos by the end of the Paleocene. That's just 10 billion years.
But to get to the truly colossal ones, the 10,000-kilogram megaherbivores, they needed a special trick.
They absolutely did. Think of the biggest of all time. The intercotheres, the proboscids like mammoths and elephants, they all share one crucial characteristic.
They're hindgut fermenters.
Exactly. Unlike foregut fermenters, like cows who have this really efficient but very slow, multi-chambered stomach.
Hindgut fermenters do their digestion later in the tract.
Right, in the large intestine.
Yeah.
This lets them process huge volumes of low-quality food really, really fast.
So it's a volume game, not an efficiency game.
Precisely. They trade maximum nutrient extraction for just sheer intake. They can eat constantly and just push that bulk through quickly enough to maintain a 10,000 kilogram body.
Which is why we don't see 10,000 kilogram cows walking around.
But we do see multi-ton elephants. Now, for carnivores, it's a totally different story. They seem to hit a much harder ceiling.
Right around 1,000 kilograms.
We see it over and over with extinct predators like the short-faced bear, Arctodus.
So why do they max out at a ton when herbivores can go 10 times bigger?
A couple of reasons. One is just the pure energy cost of hunting. It gets exponentially harder. But the more fascinating idea is a biomechanical limit.
The humerus, the upper arm bone.
The stress on the humerus at top running speed. When a huge predator is running, pouncing, turning sharply, the twisting forces on those bones are immense.
And if they get too big?
The risk of a catastrophic fracture, of just snapping your leg, becomes so high that the advantage of being bigger is canceled out. It's a trade-off between speed and structural integrity.
A physiological wall. Okay, so if land mammals had all these constraints, what about marine mammals, the true supergiants?
Totally different set of rules. The biggest constraint of all gravity is basically removed by the water.
You don't need massive leg bones to hold yourselves up.
Exactly, and the results are just stunning. The blue whale, at over 150 metric tons, is the largest animal of all time. Period.
And their evolution was incredibly fast. From these little dog-sized creatures, the Pachycetids, 53 million years ago.
To modern giants. And their rate of size increase was way faster than any terrestrial group.
Why was being so big so advantageous in the water?
Well, for the baleen whales, the filter feeders, it's about efficiency. As the climate cooled, you got these dense patches of plankton. A bigger mouth means you can scoop up exponentially more calories in one single lunge.
They're giant, efficient vacuum cleaners.
That's a good way to put it. And for the toothed whales, like the sperm whale, size meant they could dive deeper.
To get to the giant squid.
To get to the giant squid in a deep, less competitive environment. So either way, size paid off big time in the ocean.
And it wasn't just whales. There was the southern elephant seal, the largest carnivore ever, and the stellar sea cow.
A tragic story. 10,000 kilograms. Hunted to extinction in just 27 years after it was discovered by Europeans.
It just shows that even in the ocean, human impact can be swift and absolute.
Which brings us right back to those extinction pulses. The pattern in the late Pleistocene, it wasn't random at all. It followed humans around the globe.
This is the heart of the overkill hypothesis.
Outside of Africa and Asia, where Megafauna co-evolved with us for millions of years, the extinctions line up almost perfectly with human arrival.
So in Africa, the animals had time to adapt to human hunters.
Exactly. But when modern humans showed up on a new continent where the animals had no experience with our technology, the die-off was almost immediate.
Walk us through that timeline.
It's striking. Australia and New Guinea get hit first, around 46,000 years ago. Then the wave moves to North America, about 13,000 years ago. Then South America.
And then the islands, much later.
Madagascar, 2,000 years ago. New Zealand, with its giant moa birds, they were gone within a century or two of Polynesian arrival, just 700 years ago.
The correlation is just, it's incredibly compelling. And what's the counter-argument? The climate change side of the debate.
The climate first proponents argue that, yes, humans were there, but the real driver was environmental instability, intense droughts, rapid temperature shifts.
So their argument is that the megafauna were already stressed, their populations were fragmented, and humans just delivered the final blow.
That's the core of it. And they'll point to a lack of, widespread kill sites in some of the earliest regions like Australia.
It's a question of the ultimate cause.
Yeah.
But there's new forensic evidence that seems to be tipping the scales.
Yes. High-resolution chronologies from things like fungal spores.
Right, the Spormiella spores. What are they exactly?
They're a type of fungus that grows specifically on the dung of large herbivores.
So they're a proxy for how many big animals are around.
An exquisitely sensitive one. You take a sediment core from a lake, and the density of those spores, layer by layer, tells you exactly when the megafauna were there and exactly when they vanished.
That was brilliant. You don't need to find bones.
Yeah.
So what did the Australian cores show?
They showed that the Spormiella spores, and thus the megafauna, disappeared around 41,000 years ago. And critically, at that specific time, the climate was relatively stable.
So the animals disappeared first.
They disappeared first, and then immediately after, you see two things in the core. a huge spike in charcoal indicating widespread fires.
And a shift in the vegetation.
From rainforests to more fire-tolerant plants. This strongly suggests that humans removed the mega-herbivores first, either by hunting or burning the landscape. Then, with no giant browsers to eat the fuel, the whole place went up in smoke.
The collapse of the fauna came before the environmental shift.
Exactly. If climate was the main driver, you'd expect to see it the other way around.
So this wasn't just a loss of species. This was a fundamental rewiring of Earth's operating systems. We have to talk about the so what, the actual consequence.
When they are staggering, they last for millennia. Let's start with nutrient transport.
Megafauna as biological pumps.
Precisely. In the Amazon basin, they would eat in mineral-rich floodplains near the Andes, and then, well, they'd walk into the nutrient-poor interior and poop it out.
Spreading fertilizer across the whole basin.
And when they disappeared, that lateral diffusion of nutrients was reduced by over 98%.
98%.
And this is for phosphorus, which is the key limiting nutrient for plant growth in most of the Amazon.
You're essentially starving the rainforest of a vital nutrient for the next 10,000 years.
We might still be seeing the effects of that starvation today in the growth patterns of the jungle.
That's a legacy effect.
Yeah.
But the most shocking one connects their death directly to global climate: methane.
This is where you see them acting as, planetary scale engineers. Mega herbivores produce a lot of methane, a potent greenhouse gas.
We can see this effect going way back, right, to the dinosaurs.
We can. The giant sauropods are estimated to have emitted 520 million tons of methane a year.
Wow.
It's thought that their biological emissions helped keep the planet up to 10 degrees Celsius warmer than it is today. They were methane factories.
So bring that forward to the Ice Age. If their presence warms the climate, what does their sudden absence do?
It cools it. The extinction of megafauna in the Americas caused an abrupt drop in methane production, estimated at about 9.6 million tons per year.
And this happens right at the start of the Younger Dryas.
The Younger Dryas, that bizarre rapid return to near glacial conditions right when the world was supposed to be warming up.
So you're saying the megafauna extinction could have helped trigger a global cooling event?
The hypothesis is that it contributed significantly. The ice cores showed that the drop in methane back then was 2 to 4 times more rapid than any other drop in the last 500,000 years. Something big and unusual had to have happened.
The near-instantaneous removal of a huge biological methane source.
It fits the data. It connects human colonization, animal extinction, and a global climate shift into one, frankly, terrifying package.
So the lesson from all this is that these giants weren't just background decoration. They were critical regulatory mechanisms for the entire planet.
That's the core synthesis. The megabiota are disproportionately important for how the biosphere functions. Their decline has these profound downward effects on everything.
Which brings us to today. How does knowing all this help us protect what's left?
Well, it's shifting the focus to restoring function, the idea of rewilding.
Reintroducing species or analogs to do the jobs that were lost.
Exactly. Look at Madagascar. They lost their giant tortoises 2,000 years ago. A recent study introduced a similar tortoise species to fill that niche.
And what happened?
It prevented further extinctions among plants and animals that depended on the tortoise's role as a seed disperser. It shows that you can, sometimes, substitute a piece of the machinery to stabilize the system.
But let's circle back to the biggest, most immediate threat today.
Yeah, despite all the talk about climate and habitat loss, which are huge long-term problems, the sources are crystal clear.
Direct killing by humans.
For meat, for ivory, for body parts, it remains the single most significant factor in their decline today. It is the overwhelming driver.
So we have these slow reproducing case strategists facing their ultimate threat.
Us.
Right. If we could just stop the direct, unsustainable killing, we buy these precious planet-regulating animals the time they desperately need to have a fighting chance against the slower threats of habitat loss and climate change. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If losing these ancient giants caused these devastating cascading effects, from starving the Amazon of nutrients to helping trigger a global climate shift, what's our responsibility to the ones that are left?
That really is the ultimate question, isn't it? The Earth's largest organisms, they're not optional extras. They're essential systems managers. Failing to protect them now isn't just a moral failure. It's a failure to learn the lessons that are written right there in the geological record.
Absolutely. Thank you for guiding us through this colossal and critical topic on the Deep Dive. Until next time.